Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to share with you the books that I read in July. I have been a hot mess over the past a month and a half. I haven't been putting out as many videos. Also, if I normally comment on your videos and you haven't seen me commenting as frequently, this is also why. So, nothing super horrible or anything. I got into a little reading funk, which I'll talk about, which really slowed down my reading and just kind of put me in a mood. And also, I got my second dose of my COVID vaccine, which put me out for a couple of days. Then, a week after that, I got sick, had to get a COVID test, which was thankfully negative, but I was out with whatever just random bug I got. And then this past weekend, my whole family got a 24-hour gastro bug. And then the day after that, I had a migraine for the entire day. So I've been not watching a lot of YouTube, not reading a lot, not engaging a lot. So with that long-winded disclaimer out of the way, I finished 3 books. I really only read 2. Because the first one I read the majority of in June and just finished off the last 20% in August, or in July rather. The first book I want to talk about is the one that I read the majority of in June. I only finished up the last 20-25% in July, and that is Orcs and Creek by Margaret Atwood. This is the first in a trilogy, and it is a dystopian post-apocalypse story following Snowman. It's not clear whether or not he's the last person alive on Earth. It seems that he is, and he is left dealing with the aftermath of the collapse of the world. It sounds bleak, and it is, but it's also quite quippy and just the right kind of humor, very sarcastic. Snowman will often have these inner monologues where a voice will be saying something quoting an old self-help book or something very, very trite. There was a lot of that humor that I think worked really well in this world. So although it's bleak, it's not depressingly so. And there's a little bit of levity in how Snowman is having remembrances of the past. So I should mention also that the book it takes place in this present post-apocalypse, but he is constantly going back to the pre-apocalypse, and as the story unfolds you get to see how the apocalypse happened and how he got to where he is. I love this. I gave this, I think, 4.5 stars, something like that. I think I found it hard to give the first in a trilogy a 5-star because I don't really know how the story ends. I did find the ending fairly satisfactory, but it isn't, the story is quite obviously not complete, which is understandable, but this was just perfect for me. I haven't read an Atwood in a long time that's really hit me like this one. I always love her writing, but I don't always love how her stories come together. But this one came together, I think, really well. It would have been really easy for a book with all of the elements it had to feel really clunky, or for those elements to feel shoehorned in places. But all of the elements really added to a civilization that felt very believable. I actually made a list because there's so many things that I knew I wouldn't remember them all. So here are some of the things that are woven into the story, are part of the world building. We have plagues, we have increase of infectious microbes, we have climate change as kind of a background thing happening in this book. We have genetic manipulation and dubious research ethics. We have meddling with nature. We have huge power imbalances politically and economically. We have oppression of certain socioeconomic classes. We have withholding of resources, food scarcity. There's so much going on, and you can kind of tell how this book could have been a mess, and it just wasn't. I feel like all of those elements made the world more believable because, of course, a cataclysmic, apocalyptic event is never just one domino, right? It's a whole series of things that are going wrong that come together in a catastrophic way. So, highly recommend. I am very excited to continue this series. We started off July with a really strong start. Like the first week of July, me finishing that book was just wonderful. And then it all kind of went downhill. I started a buddy read with Keely from ABibliophilesJourney. We were reading Neuromancer by William Gibson. And this was like, I think pretty much the very first cyberpunk book. Science fiction written back, I want to say in the early 80s, sometime in the 80s. And this book is the first time, like, William Gibson coined the phrase cyberspace, comes from this book. And it deals with artificial intelligence, which I really, really like. And the plot is kind of following a heist of, I believe, like information of some sort. I don't really know for sure because I DNF'd this book halfway through. I've already apologized to Keely, but I will apologize again. I am sorry, Keely. I really didn't want to leave you hanging, but this was just a slog to get through. It's really a shame because it had a lot of elements I like. That cyberpunk kind of feeling. It felt really gritty, very like Blade Runner. I found the atmosphere very compelling. It kind of had that like seedy underbelly, almost like crime noir sort of feel in places. But it was so needlessly, in my opinion, convoluted and really super challenging. Just came to realize that the only thing I was enjoying about this book was the aesthetic, essentially, and I didn't like how the characters were being drawn. I didn't like how the plot was obfuscated. I didn't enjoy how needlessly complex and, again, obfuscated the world building was. There were just terms after terms after terms. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now. This kind of started off my reading funk. And it continued because the next book I picked up after Neuromancer was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. And this book was so boring. I did a reading vlog, which I will post below and up here, wherever. And I was so excited because this is such a famous book and I love science fiction. And this is, one of the earlier science fictions. And it just was so incredibly boring. I think it's interesting in an academic sense. Like, I can understand why this book is famous, that the ideas in it are were very novel, innovative, like creative. Like, obviously Jules Verne had a big imagination, but the way I see it, he was an ideas man. Like, he had all of these fantastical ideas, these great story ideas, but the execution. And this isn't like it's a classic and maybe classics aren't for me. I have read other classics. I have read other classic science fiction novels that are much more compelling, and I don't mind a slow-paced novel either, but literally this novel is set on a submarine exploring the ocean floor, the coral reefs, like the deep ocean, just all of this wonderful world that is not accessible to humans or wasn't at the time. And he made that so incredibly boring. Scenes that were more thrilling or interesting lasted a page and then they were over. And the vast majority of this novel was descriptions, not even really descriptions, more so just like lists of species that the narrator was cataloging. So they'd go somewhere and he would list the different coral and fishes and, rays and sharks or whatever it was. And just kind of be in awe of all of these things he was seeing. And that got old very, very quickly. So very boring. I gave this, I think, 2 stars. And this really did solidify my funk. The only saving grace, really, besides finishing off Orcs and Creek, was that throughout the month of July, I listened to the audiobook of Know by Name by Chanel Miller. This is a memoir of Chanel Miller, obviously, who has only revealed her identity recently. She was known as Emily Doe. She was the anonymous survivor victim of the Stanford rape case, if you remember back from, I think that was like 2015. And she wrote a victim impact statement as part of the trial, and it went viral, and rightfully so, because Chanel Miller is a gorgeous writer. The book is, of course, a very difficult to read, but very important. She really puts you in her shoes, really like no other memoir I have read. I enjoy memoir greatly, but boy, oh boy, did she make me feel what she was feeling. I was moved reading this book. I was angered and incensed constantly. She describes kind of like the feeling around being assaulted because she was unconscious during the incident. And so she describes how it felt to like wake up on a gurney, not know what happened, the kind of like weirdness of that, and then slowly realizing exactly what had happened and how serious it was. So you feel her confusion, you feel her upset, you feel her sadness. And then the memoir details the trial, and then what happened after the trial, and the sentencing, all of these things. And I felt her every step of the way. She puts it in terms that are just so perfectly explained that if you are lucky enough to have not experienced what she has experienced, any of the things she has experienced, even, not necessarily just this assault, but she also details just kind of the harassment she'd faced just in the world as a woman. If you're lucky enough to not have had those experiences, I think this might be as close to understanding it as possible without having been through it. I can't speak highly enough of her writing. It was so eloquent, just precise. She circles back to things so that to remind you, to make you remember some of the points she's making, but it never felt overly repetitive. She always would circle back and frame it in a slightly new way, or word it in a slightly new way, or use a slightly different analogy, more so to solidify her points and not to belabor them. She is a super skilled writer, obviously. If this had never happened to her, she would have written a book about something eventually, because she's just an amazing writer. And I love this book, and I gave it 5 stars, and everyone should read it. Everyone should read it. The other thing I had started reading in July was Emma, as part of Jane Austen July, but after my DNF and my slog through 20,000 Leagues, my reading slowed down considerably, so I'm only like a quarter into Emma, so I will finish that off in August. But yeah, those are the books that I read in July. I hope that everyone is doing well. I am excited to get back into the booktube groove a little bit, back into my reading groove. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care.